All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Pete Berube. I'm the chair of the Finance Committee. Tonight is the 30th of March, and I'm going to call the meeting to order and ask everybody quickly just introduce yourselves, and then we'll get right into the agenda.
Jody Garson.
Sarah Reyes.
Peter Underhill.
Joyce Briardi.
John Stedman.
Kathy McInnes.
Jim Borkman.
Okay. Not with us tonight is John Lohr. Okay. I'm going to ask the town administrator or Karen Beret to come forward and present the town buildings budget.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike Kaczynski, Town Administrator, and Karen Beret is here as well, the Operations Support Manager. I appreciate that you have a full agenda tonight, and we'll try to keep this brief. I'd like to start just briefly by mentioning that you should have received an updated budget document which contains my preliminary budget recommendations. The Select Board has reviewed those, but they have not formally taken a final vote on it. I expect that to happen at their meeting next Monday, but those are my recommendations as they stand today. So, I know you'll need a little time to go through those, but I do plan on going through that document in detail at your meeting next week, if you'd like me to. And if the board does make any changes, Select Board makes any changes to that, I will send that out to the committee right away after Monday's meeting. Also, you've received an updated draft of the annual town meeting warrant. It reflects the most recent changes made by the Select Board. Again, I will go through that in detail at your meeting next week. And certainly if any individual members have questions, they can certainly reach out to me in the meantime if you have any questions about, I know you've been assigned articles, or so if it's an article you have and you have any questions about why it's there, why it's not there, feel free to give me a call and I'll chat with you about that. This evening, Mr. Chairman, Karen and I were going to discuss the proposed town buildings budget. There has been some changes to that based on some discussions we've had with the school administration. If you remember, our original budget proposal included an upgrade to the position currently held within that budget. We were looking at upgrading that to a facilities manager position at $75,000 a year. We also we're going to need to continue a certain level of private consulting services to help with additional cleaning in order to maintain that. There has been a lot of discussion over the past several months, and I've had some discussion over the past year here and there with the school department about this. And the school department has a much more robust a custodial maintenance team for the school system. And we think they are much better positioned to handle all the maintenance for the town's buildings. And I've discussed this with them, and they are quite open to the idea. And they've had discussions with the school committee in regards to this. This would impact some of the unions, but I'm sure we'll be able to work through those issues. So I just wanted to talk about the proposal that we'd like to put on the table and that the Select Board did discuss last week. If you all have this sheet, this was put together in cooperation with the school department as a proposed budget for them to be able to take over all the town's building maintenance. So that's all the staff time, as well as the management of the facilities in conjunction and working with me for planning for improvements, addressing any issues with the buildings, and overseeing all the day-to-day cleaning and maintenance of the buildings. So these buildings would include this building, the library, the police department, the DPW, DPW's new office building, Niagara Hall, and some light maintenance for the fire department. The fire employees take care of most of that themselves. That request would be around $130,000. You'll see the breakdown. It's $129,441. And in looking at the original budget that I requested for this year, to accommodate that, we've been able to reduce the costs on the town side by approximately $120,000. So it would only be about a $10,000 increase in cost, which I believe would provide a much higher level of service, and as well as open up time that's currently taken by the operations support manager. So that we need that extra time in the office, as I discussed at your last meeting, so I won't go over all of that again. So essentially, the result of this would be that my requests or my proposal for the town buildings have reduced accordingly. You'll see a $52,000 drop in wages. I'm just gonna run through this budget form. That doesn't take into account, it's actually $75,000 when you take into account what I was requesting originally, so that request is going away. There's been a reduction in VMB repairs by $5,000, and the contracts is actually going down about $30,000. It doesn't show that much because we have transferred some of the contracts from the selectmen's budget to the town buildings budget. And Karen, I don't know if you want to touch upon that particular change and why we're recommending that.
We did, and really it's just the copier contract payments that we're moving over, which is about $12,000 a year, and we moved those over to the town buildings budget. It just makes more sense, was the only thing in that line on the select board side, and really those are used by everyone in the building, so we felt it was better suited under town buildings. So it's really just a wash, we just moved it over.
There's no change in the cost of the town, it's just moving from one account to another.
Right.
Under one department to another, which makes more sense. So essentially, we'd be looking to move these expenses out from the municipal side of the ledger to the school side of the ledger. These would be increases that would be moved over to the schools, and these downward adjustments made on the town side. It is something, again, that we've talked about quite a bit, trying to leverage the manpower and the focusing on skill points in the different areas of government and trying to let those areas focus on areas they specialize in, such as the school and their ability to do the interior building maintenance. I know there was some discussion as well at the select board meeting about the possibility down the road of maybe having the DPW take over some of the outdoor maintenance for some of the school buildings. So that's a discussion that will be occurring going forward. We don't have anything ready for this town meeting, but it's something that we're interested in, and we'd like to pursue going down the road. So, but for this year, this is what we're looking at, and the net change really is some additional part-time custodians for the school, but there's no net change in full-time benefited staff. So that's again unchanged. So I think Karen and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. I don't think the school brought this up at their meeting with you because we were still trying to work out some of those finer details.
Okay. I'll open it up for questions. Mr. Stedman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Kuzinski, I think I heard you say that salaries are down $52,000
$52,000 from the current budget. That's
from the current budget?
Yeah.
Because you're
75
showing
from-
only
75
38, okay,
Yeah, 75 from my proposed budget.
Okay.
Because the above-level service request isn't in this budget, it was in a separate document.
right. But then there's some increases as well, because it's $38,000 above. You've highlighted 38,000.
38 is the total, so it's went from 90 down to 38.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not a
I-
differential, that's the total
I-
request.
okay.
Yeah,
I misread it, thank you.
Yeah.
And that's actually the energy manager's
That's the energy
salary.
manager salary, so that's the only piece that would, so there's no actual custodial that would be remaining in this budget,
Okay.
staff.
Okay. Anybody else?
Looks great.
Mr. Borgman?
So where does the 129,441 appear? It's not in the
It
building
appears,
budget, it's in the school budget?
it's in the school budget, and.
Under what line?
It will appear in the schools, I think it's their expense budget? Yeah, it will appear in the school's expense line on the budget.
Overall school additional budget.
Okay. Thank you.
So the cost, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
So the cost is a little less than $10,000 for the town?
Yeah, for overall, yes.
And we were paying, how much? I'm sorry?
We were paying $52,000 for
Okay.
a facilities worker. I had put a request in, a proposal in this year to increase it to $75,000 for someone that would be basically a hands-on manager.
Right.
That request would be withdrawn as part of this proposal.
Perfect. Thank you.
Just to add, so we met with Mr. Engler, Terry, Mr. Wiggins, and
Mr. Mulaney.
Mr.
Yeah.
Mulaney. They were definitely very receptive to this. I think we worked really well together with them. I've had some conversations back and forth with Mr. Engler. We're gonna try to, as we're slowly looking at the expenses and how that's all gonna work, we'll still work hand in hand with him, as far as paying the bills and whatnot to start, so it'll be kind of a transition. So we're not expecting this to just flip completely, but we're willing to do that and see where we go. I think it's a good move.
So we will be maintaining as well, as you see, some of the supplies and expenditures, so we'll keep those separate for now as we go through the next year. We want to see how things settle out, and if it makes sense, we will look to combine that later as well, but I think for tracking, we want to make sure that we know what the continued expenses are for the building under a new maintenance program.
Okay. I'm curious if there are any kind of second order effects of the change in terms of like the 4% budget growth, that budget
Right.
growth then goes to the school. Does it matter? Maybe not. Maybe it doesn't even if it does, maybe it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think the net increase to the school's bottom line would, the 130 is outside the 4% because it's actually dropping under the town's 4%. So I don't think there's a huge net change. Like I said, it's probably in the vicinity of $10,000, but I would make the case that it's well worth it considering the higher level of service we're going to get. And the fact that based on, the experiences we've had, that the town really has been unable to invest properly in the overall maintenance of the buildings. I mean, we have a lot of, obviously, as you know, a lot of stresses on the budget. So we've tried to work with the funding that we have. But I think this will lend towards better maintenance and will definitely save the town money in the long run.
Okay.
Certainly adds manpower for us. Prior to that, we really only had one senior building maintenance worker. As of late, probably the past year, it's very difficult. If he was out or anything happened, we had no subs. There's just nobody.
Okay.
So this really helps us in that way. There will always be someone to sub in.
Any last questions? Mr. Borgman?
Can you clarify a little bit more on the 129? So we're combining it with the school custodian maintenance, but I think I heard you say that it was going up by 10,000, not down.
Right, because there's basically $120,000 reduction on the town side
Mhm.
from what was requested, and then $130,000 increase on the school side. So the net increase overall from what I had originally proposed is only $10,000. And
Okay.
that 130 here would be above the 4% increase of the schools, because they're taking on additional work outside the school buildings.
Yeah. So we're not gaining any efficiencies by combining with the school?
Well, we're gaining a lot of efficiencies in the operations by
Okay.
having really the resources of the entire school custodial staff be able to assist if there's an emergency here, if there's issues where one day they need 3 or 4 custodial staff here versus one. It was not that the school wouldn't help us before they would, but it was just difficult to arrange before. I think if it's under one programmatic chief, I think it's a lot easier to work that way. And we have a great working relationship with the school administration, with Bob and Terry and John. So I'd see a smooth transition here. And so, yes, it is about a $10,000 addition in cost to the town, but I think, like I said, I think it'd be well made up for in the approved services.
And I would also add that we have to basically outsource everything to subcontractors, anything electrical, any plumbing that we do. Their custodians have a lot of skills in that, and so a lot of that could be done in-house now that we haven't been able to do. We've been paying, outside.
But wouldn't that be a savings?
It is.
That will be a
It will
savings,
be.
you
We
just
haven't,
can't
we
see
haven't,
it yet.
yeah, we can't quantify it,
Put a
but
dollar
but
on
I
it.
can tell you it's
Right, I know.
there. But until we have 6 months or 9 months in it, I hesitate to say how much that's gonna be, but I would say there'll definitely be some savings there.
Okay.
Okay. Unless there's any questions, thanks, and I would applaud you for looking, I'll get to you, sorry. I would applaud you for looking at this, because this is really where, you
Really,
know, we
truly.
can get some savings across the town.
Thank you.
Get rid of, as I mentioned last night in the CPC, get rid of some stovepipes and be a little bit more efficient, so.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Underhill.
I agree, this is an excellent proposal. I just, I have to wonder, you touched on it lightly, the union issues.
Yes.
Has this been brought up with the unions?
Well, right now, I can tell you on the town side, this position here has been vacant for about 6 months, and we did try to fill it unsuccessful. But obviously, with any change, we will need to, you know, bargain with the union, and, you know, I'm sure we'll reach a successful conclusion, but we will be bargaining with them on the change. We are going into a negotiation with them as well. Their contract, 3-year agreement expires June 30th, and we're in the midst of having, beginning those discussions with them, so this will definitely be part of those discussions. And I know the school will have to do the same on their side. And this
Might
side,
be
they're
easier on
actually
the school
adding
side,
staff.
right, yeah.
So usually the unions are fairly supportive of adding staff, so I'm sure that can be worked out.
Yeah, I don't see an issue on the school side, that's for sure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and
Thanks.
Kathy, I apologize, thank you
No,
for
please,
taking
it's
us.
fine.
Thank you, Kathy, for.
I really appreciate that you're
appreciate it.
working with the school now. That's,
Appreciate it. It's very exciting,
Yeah.
honestly, it's been
Yeah,
a long
really.
time, we have a really
It
good
has.
relationship with them.
it has.
Well,
So-
Thank you to the school committee.
I'm going to go out of order. I'm going to ask Ms. McGinnis to present, please.
Oh, just switch seats for a minute. Just want to make sure.
So we're going to, the agenda, our agenda has Ms. Riley presenting, but due to my error, we're going to present out of order, and Ms. McGinnis has been asked to present the citizens' petitions on Sewer and Water Commission. Thank you, Ms. McGinnis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening. I would like to start with my preface, my remarks with a quote delivered back in 1894 from former Associate Justice of the United States Supreme Court, Oliver Wendell Holmes, Jr., who before that was Chief Justice of the great Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court. Quote, "It is desirable that judicial proceedings should take place under the public eye, because it is of the highest moment that those who administer justice shall always act under the sense of public responsibility, and that every citizen should be able to satisfy himself with his own eyes as to the mode in which the public duty is performed. Because the Select Board has not permitted anyone to present our citizens' petitions before it, the administration of justice to all residents has been denied. And Mr. Chair, we residents are most grateful that you have permitted discussion on this matter. Several Millis residents have successfully petitioned the Select Board to insert into the Spring '22 annual town meeting warrant to be held on Monday, May 2nd, 2 articles, certified by Town Clerk Lisa Jane Harden, of which 2/3 voter approval is required for one article and a majority is required for the second article, in order to elect a Board of Water and Sewer Commissioners and to remove these responsibilities from the Select Board. The elected commission will undertake the same sewer and water responsibilities as the Select Board currently has when it sits as the Town Water and Sewer Commissioners. If successful at town meeting, this matter must appear on the next town ballot, or, as it is said, go to the polls. The 2 questions we have been asked during discussions with residents are, what is a citizen's petition, and what is a town warrant? A citizen's petition is a procedure to amend the town's charter or the town's general bylaws, the 2 basic documents that tell us how to run our town government. 10 registered voters sign the petition, the signatures must be verified by our town clerk, and it is presented to the Select Board for inclusion in the town warrant. A citizen's petition is a method that any voter can use when the Select Board will not place a requested matter on the warrant. The town warrant is a document that contains several articles, and some call them requests, that those who attend a town meeting will deliberate and vote. I am told the draft copy of the town warrant will be posted on the Select Board website. The 2 petitions to be discussed now will be considered at this May 2 annual spring town meeting. So why is an elected water and sewer commission needed now? There was an elected water and sewer commission in Millis. I'd like to give a brief history with thanks to Clerk Lisa Jane Harden for assisting with our research. At the March 1, 1971 town election, the elected 3 water commissioners, 3 different sewer commissioners, park commissioners, cemetery commissioners, and the tree warden were disbanded, and all of these responsibilities were taken over by an elected Department of Public Works. This elected Department of Public Works was disbanded in January 1991. There were various town meetings and ballot votes necessary for all of this to come to fruition. Voters concluded it made sense at that time to dissolve the elected Department of Public Works and place those responsibilities under the umbrella of the Board of Selectmen. However, based on recent events, it appears to many of us that the Select Board does not have the time to pursue its important goals, while at the same time putting many hours into water, sewer issues, and policy. Mr. Chair, this is in no way disrespecting the Select Board, and we apologize if residents or the Select Board think that. I personally understand the responsibilities of the Select Board. I was humbled to be a member. But it now makes sense to have an elected water and sewer commission whose sole responsibility is the residents' water and sewer needs and issues. Can you imagine how many hours this frees up the Select Board to devote time to the plethora of issues currently on its back burner because of lack of time? Our town administrator is proposing reorganization of the Select Board staff to allow him to work on both his and the Select Board's goals. We respond that by relieving our town administrator, and thus the Select Board, of water and sewer issues, it will free up hours of time per week, thus allowing more time for his and the Select Board's goals. Let me interject here that, as stated in one of the citizens' petitions, the town administrator will continue to be involved in the maintenance projects not done by in-house staff, as he will be the Water and Sewer Commission's agent. This relates to bids, borrowing, and the like, as he is the town's chief procurement officer. We have been advised by the Select Board that expanding its membership from 3 to 5 will alleviate the burden now placed on 3 individuals. But I must mention that I have attended a local town's meeting that did have 5 members, and it was a great disappointment to me. 5 different views, little negotiation and consensus building, and much interrupting, the end result being a most confused staff. But that's another issue. With past support by the Finance Committee, and once again, Mr. Chair and members, thank you. The water and sewer ratepayers are not paying as much in DPW salaries for those employees who did not work on water and sewer issues, but nonetheless, a portion of several of their salaries were paid by water and sewer ratepayers. Members of the now dissolved Enterprise Funds Advisory Committee, of which I had the honor to chair, are still concerned that this practice at many levels remains. A study commissioned by the Select Board 3 years ago listed recommendations that, to the best of our recollection, the Select Board may not have had the time to at least discuss. We, meaning the several residents who either worked on or signed these citizens' petitions, are concerned that there are many outstanding topics the Enterprise Funds Advisory Committee had on our docket, but 2 Select Board members and the town administrator wrongly informed our residents that the work of our committee was done. All members of the Enterprise Funds Advisory Committee deny stating this. We continue to await a response as to when and with whom this conversation took place. And the members of the Enterprise Funds Advisory Committee thank Mr. Craig Schultz for his support. The chief responsibility of an elected water and sewer commission will be advocating for existing users. From my attendance at other towns' water and sewer commission meetings, I have learned much about what they are doing to increase revenues. Soon, Millis will have some of the purest PFAS-free public water in the Commonwealth, and from what we've read, in the entire country. We are the envy of our municipal neighbors throughout Massachusetts. Some years ago, our Select Board was in negotiations to sell water to a private Medway developer, but negotiations failed at the last minute. We must once again pursue the possibility of selling water if the Commonwealth continues to support this, as it did just a few years ago. Next, what about the possibility of the fire department filling residential pools for a fee that is commensurate with what a private company pays? Could that be done? Let's explore. Even if it is one pool a year, that is revenue. All ideas must be considered, and there now must also be a discussion about water ratepayers who want a separate meter for irrigation. It is only fair to give the approximately 1,752 sewer users and the 2,881 residences with water town hookup a water and sewer commission dedicated solely to their water and sewer needs and issues. Please do not view these warrant articles as taking away some responsibilities of the select board. Please view the two citizens' petitions as a way to free up both the select board's and the town administrator's time to devote to other matters equally as important as water and sewer issues, and give the water and sewer ratepayers the attention they deserve. I can say with confidence that enacting an elected water and sewer commission will not add additional expense to the water or sewer ratepayers. Quite the contrary. If town meeting approval is given, we will, of course, review and research the costs and report to the residents prior to the ballot vote. Lastly, many residents have supported the concept of an elected water and sewer commission years before we prepared and filed these two petitions. I did not prepare these petitions myself. I am merely speaking on behalf of those folks who have either contributed to or signed the citizens' petitions. In conclusion, I have been a water and sewer ratepayer since 1987, and many others have been that before me. And many of us have witnessed firsthand the excessive amounts the select board has taken from the water and sewer enterprise funds. And they can take this money because they can. And in my humble opinion, and the opinion of several others, the select board continues to do so. With an elected water and sewer commission, the needs, especially financial, of all water and sewer ratepayers will come first. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Kathy, would you take a moment to just synopsize the process for us again? So I read, along with you, as you presented, the two-third voter approval is required for one article, which likely changes a bylaw, and the other one changes a charter on a majority vote, and I could have that backwards. But once that happens, if it happens, would you tell us what happens next? Is it then the fall, I think you said that the following election, is that when there would be an election of sewer and water commissioners? Or is it then a townwide vote for the change itself? If you would, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
The latter of what you said, Mr. Chair. The statute says the next regularly scheduled ballot, town ballot for the second phase of this approval. And then if it is approved there, if it's approved at town meeting and there, then elections are held for individuals. But it's two separate elections.
So in this case, would it be the following week, or would it be the following year?
Well, conceivably, hoping we get approval at town meeting, the next regularly scheduled election is September for the primaries. And then after that is November for the midterms. So conceivably, you could have an elected board running in the November election.
Okay.
I don't see how, personally, my own opinion is I don't see if it was, that it would have to wait until the next year's May local election, because the statute does not state a local election. It states the next regularly
Election.
scheduled.
Okay. Okay. While I'm reviewing and probably coming up with more questions.
Can I just address that election thing?
I think it was explained adequately, but if you have,
Correct.
what's that?
She's not correct.
Feel free to come on up, Ms. Harden. Thank you.
It would be the next regularly scheduled town election, and it wouldn't be the next week, because our ballots are printed already. it would be the following year, and then the next would be the following year. So it would be a 2-year process.
We can discuss that because I read it.
I know we can't do it on a primary ballot, because I've already asked.
Oh, okay. We
And,
didn't mention that when we talked. I
well-
thought you said you weren't sure, so I just assumed it. I apologize.
no. Sorry.
So, honestly, it's just,
work in progress and.
I don't think it's the deciding factor. You know, I do want to understand the process, but nonetheless, so it can be, you know, we can clarify on that. Okay, if anybody has any questions, Ms. Garzon?
Having watched last week's meeting on YouTube, I realized the importance of everyone using a microphone. I just want to commend you on the amount of work and other folks who've put into this. I can see that it's very thoughtful. This wasn't thrown together. You know, there's been a lot of work that's gone into this, and I know you've been thinking about it. And, you know, for a long time, with what has transpired in recent weeks with the sewer hookup issue, I think makes it kind of a fortuitous time to be discussing this as to whether this is the right time for us in Millis to have a separate water and sewer commission. So I just want to thank you very much for the amount of work that's put in. I think you've explained it very well.
Thank you.
Mr. Stebbin?
Ms. McGinnis, would this commission have the authority to set the tax rates is the first part of my question. Or the fees, the user fees, which in essence is a tax.
The select board does that now, through the chair. The select board does that now, so the commission will take over whatever responsibilities and chores the select board has now regarding water and sewer rates and issues.
Thank you. And then the personnel that do this work now are all are part of the DPW. Would they remain under the supervision of the DPW and salaries allocated as they are today?
Well, from what I've gleaned from other towns through the chair is that there will be a budget, a water and sewer commission budget, and those employees that are assigned work for the water and sewer issues will be paid for by the Water and Sewer Commission. It's my understanding that there's a separate budget.
Thank you.
If you sound like I didn't answer it right, I don't want to leave you confused.
Well, I believe they're union employees that work for the DPW. Is that correct?
Yes.
So they're town employees, and this is a commission of the town, so I'm sure it's just administrative issues there, but I'm not sure I really understand that.
I'd like to try to clarify, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but.
No.
But ultimately, I think what we're talking about is that and I have a question along these lines myself, that the town administrator and the town's budget includes overhead or indirect costs that they prorate from the management of the enterprises, especially water and sewer, specifically water and sewer in this case. And I believe what you are talking about is that those fees that are paid for out of the enterprise funds would then be reallocated or realigned in the budget underneath the sewer and water commissioner, and not necessarily, it wouldn't be for the maintenance of the system. That would still fall under the DPW. That's the operation, the O&M, operation maintenance of those systems. But the management of paying the bills and administering the fees and the town sending the bills out, collections, all those things would then fall on, or a portion of those things would fall under the town sewer and water commissioners. But I don't want to put words in your mouth, and I think that's what you're asking. And if you
A
could,
little bit more detail.
if you could clarify.
I think you did a good job clarifying it.
Okay. Ms. Reyes?
Yes, my question is, I know you mentioned that some of the fees collected for water and sewer usage in the town are not being used for water and sewer usage, and I was just wondering how you were aware of that, and what would that go to if you pull the money out of that DPW, like a general budget?
Well, as I mentioned, there was and there continues to be a report prepared by a consulting group that the selectmen asked, and there were several recommendations made, and certain of those recommendations have not even had an opportunity to be discussed by the select board, probably because there isn't time to discuss the minute issues. The Enterprise Funds Committee was concerned that what's called the indirect costs to the town hall staff for their work on water and sewer issues is slightly inflated. And I think I may have requested something from the finance director to break down what those funds are, but with the amount of work that she has in preparing the budget, I totally support her putting this aside until, like I said, if this gets through the first phase of town meeting, we'll provide detailed analysis for whenever the town clerk thinks the next can be on the ballot.
Yeah, okay. No, just because I have no knowledge of how any of, like, the water sewer funds work, so I was just curious as to, I always thought it was just a general fund, like, you pay a fee for water, sewer, whatever taxes, it goes to the town, and the town allocates them as necessary. I didn't realize that you're saying that you feel that the water and sewer fees have to all go to water and sewer issues as opposed to just the general town fund?
Right.
Correct.
And don't get me wrong, the select board did yeoman's work straightening out the employees who work for the water and sewer, get paid by the water and sewer. But over the years, and through no fault of anybody here, the fellow who runs the transfer station, half of his salary was being paid by either the water or sewer fund, and he never even did that. So they did straighten that out. However, there are other matters within the report, and they're still meeting. They're meeting now still with the consultant to work out issues. And unfortunately, I wish that the defunct Enterprise Funds Advisory Committee was privy to those discussions so that we could share and amend our thoughts, but we're not.
Ms. Garzon, please hold that thought, Mr. Schultz.
So just to clarify what an enterprise fund is. Let's go back to basics. Because
I've explained what a warrant is
Yeah.
and what a citizen's petition, so go ahead.
well, I've been here for a while, and it's taken me a few years to understand some of this, and thankfully, Ms. Johnston is here to correct me if I get it a little wrong. So an enterprise fund can only be used for the issue for which it was established. So you pay your water fees, and those water fees go into the enterprise fund, and it can only be used for water issues. But the employees that we have for the town, working for the DPW, work on a variety of different projects. You know, they're assigned to whatever they're told to do. And, you know, if there's a water main break, the employees have to work on that. Now, that would be stormwater. So their time gets allocated to all these different buckets, if you will. So one employee would be paid out of water, sewer, stormwater, and the general DPW budget. So it's up to, right now, the town administrator's office and the select board to kind of help set up that budget. Now, this would take that responsibility and put it to the commission, as I understand it, that they would help set that budget. But every year, there needs to be a transfer from general funds or the enterprise funds to help pay for some of the overhead. And that's kind of the part that is, I would say, more subjective or more, it's not as transparent. And employee allocation, it's a little bit art, it's a little bit science. when it comes to the DPW employees. So it's been an ongoing and fluid process. And I think, as Ms. McGinnis has mentioned, it's a lot of work. And it's a lot of numbers to stay on top of. And having the select board, who's responsible for all of these other issues, and the town administrator's office, basically riding herd over this, maybe it's time to have a separate commission that this is all that they're paying attention to. Does that sum that up correctly?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
But I'd like to add that the report, the consultant's report, recommended that the way the employees, they don't have a time clock, but they're now doing in 4-hour increments what bucket they're working for. And it was the Enterprise Funds Committee that felt maybe that should happen with town workers as well, to get an accurate picture of what they're doing. It may turn out to be more. We don't know. Let's explore.
Mr. Schultz.
You want to sit next to me?
Thanks for being the thing, of course, I'll sit next to you. No, I want to be clear, I'm not endorsing or not endorsing or making any comments on this article. First I've heard of it tonight was tonight, so I'm going to think about it. But I just want to address 2 points. The indirect cost piece that you brought up, that's the billing from the town clerk's office and others. We wouldn't hire another set of billing people, so there's always going to be this transfer that occurs between the enterprise funds and the town clerk's office, or not town clerk, the town assessor's office. So there's always going to be those transfers, and that's what this committee would work on, I imagine. The second point that I really wanted to make was April 11th, I hope, we're going to have that report presented. I saw an early draft today. Early draft. So I'm not going to comment on it at all, but it is much more thorough. They've done a good job. April 11th, I hope that we have a good report that we can review at the select board meeting, pass it out to anybody who wants to see it. But that's the tentative date. I just saw an early draft. Carl's still working on it, though. But it is in the works. It's not something that's been delayed forever. It's, I don't know, something got in the way over the last 3 years. Who knows? But they're getting good numbers. I think it's going to be a much more accurate report and get better data.
Unfortunately, what Mr. Schultz says is that other things get in the way. And I'd just like to echo what,
I was meaning COVID. I wasn't talking about the other stuff. That's why the delay.
All right, I just want to maybe give an example that really simplifies this issue in terms of why employee costs are divided up. You can also think of it, because the same thing happens with capital equipment. When the DPW says we're going to buy a backhoe excavator, backhoe excavator could be used for digging holes for water mains, for sewer mains, for roads. And the typical formula, and now the storm sewer, the typical formula is, it's either a quarter that each of the enterprise funds plus the DPW pays for that capital, or it could be a third if it's not used for, but it's basically a quarter. And there's no further accounting that's done. We don't count the hours that a piece of equipment is used over the course of a year, or course of a month, is used to do one project or the other. It's just, the formula is, it's perfectly acceptable to do it that way, as is, it's perfectly acceptable to estimate the hours that an employee works. We have just decided, the town has decided, and the consultant has reinforced that there are better ways to do that, and that's what we're pursuing, so that we can be more accurate in the way that the employee hours are allocated to the projects that they work on. In the example of the transfer station, I believe, one way or another, that's a mistake, and it was corrected last year, so that those hours are appropriately charged under the DPW budget and the transfer station line. So I just wanted to, if you think of it in employee hours, it's a little bit more complicated. If you think about it in capital equipment, it's pretty simple. And then I just wanted to ask you another question on the Enterprise Advisory Committee, the Enterprise Fund Advisory Committee. You had referenced some unfinished work, and if you could just go into a little bit more detail on that for us.
well, an issue was selling water. The discussions began, again, you know, it was short-lived, our committee. Ways to increase revenue to lower expenses. Constantly working on the indirect costs. Whatever would come before the sewer tie-in issue. You can go on and on. I mean, I can provide you with what our agenda was, but it was a more thorough moratorium. Just give the committee a chance to work with the selectmen on trying to save money.
Okay. And a question, another follow-up question for anybody that can raise their hand and think they can answer it is, would members of the community or members, elected officials in the town, would they be allowed to run for multiple offices? Can a select board member run for a sewer commissioner? Can a person hold multiple offices at the same time?
I don't think so.
Why would you want to? Well, actually, that's why I'm asking. I'm curious as to why, will there be a pool of people that would run for election? I have the same concern for this select board expanding from 3 to 5 members. Would we have people that would run for the select board? And what happens if, I'm trying to think this through, more than just the immediate, but the long term, so that I can, make my own decision when I vote and make my own recommendation here. Would there be people that would run for this? And, what would happen if we didn't have people that would run? So, and it's something to think about.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Underhill.
Recently, we had the Charter Review Committee do an exhaustive review of the needs of the town. Was this specific issue brought up by the Charter Review Committee, to your knowledge?
No.
Was it addressed to them at all? Like, did you bring them this idea? 'Cause it sounds like it's been worked on for some years.
No, because we're going an avenue different from the Charter Review Commission. They're an advisory committee, so we spent the time, no, we didn't, in short answer, no.
Okay, and they didn't see this as a need either when they did the charter review?
It wouldn't be part of the charter review.
Why? It could have been. They were reviewing the entire charter.
Maybe at the time, I don't know, I may be speaking for you, but maybe at the time the discussion hadn't been brought up about this commission. But it sounds to me
Okay.
like it's an excellent idea, and I thank you for presenting it.
Mr. Stedman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of questions. How many commissioners do you envision serving?
The petition states a 3-member elected board.
Okay. How would vacancies be filled to get to the point of what happens if not enough people run, or if somebody has to leave the commission for some reason?
With all due respect, those are issues that don't really pertain to the matter today. You could have select board that no one runs
Okay.
for that, no one would run. There's been a planning board member who really isn't showing up. There's nothing you can do when you're elected. You have to wait till the next town election, or they resign, and then you hold a special election.
The final question, why did you not include the Stormwater Enterprise Fund in this?
You know how many people have mentioned that, Mr. Chair? Because the water and sewer issues are directly state statute. There is not yet a state statute for stormwater. And quite frankly, when we started those quite a while ago, there wasn't the contention that there is now with stormwater. I and the several people, we didn't want to take on too much. If people wanted a elected stormwater commission, let them go for it. It can be done. All you have to do is change water and sewer to stormwater in what we filed.
So that would
But-
stay with the Select Board.
Yes.
Thank you.
But I just want to emphasize that I think we're giving the select board, by having this, more time to work on issues that, quite frankly, may be more important than what they're discussing regarding water and sewer issues. There's so much, people complaining about things that haven't been done, rightfully so, because it's a large docket, and they're looking for staff to help alleviate that. But I just hope that the select board realizes that we would be allowing them to work on matters that are passionate to them.
Ms. Riley?
Nicole Riley, 258 Village Street. With all due respect, Mr. Chair, I think making a decision whether or not to vote on this based upon the possibility that you won't get enough people to run, I think is really degrading the residents of the town of Millis. Granted, in this town, in every town, in the federal government, the state government, churches, schools, no matter what organization you're in, you have a very small group of people that do the vast majority of work. But more and more people are getting tired of that, and they want to get involved. And I would venture to guess that our town clerk could attest to the fact that it's in a very rare situation do we have any elected position in this town that does not have at least one person that runs for it. So the argument that we should not consider going from 3 to 5, or we should not select board members, or we should not consider a project like this, a commission like this, because maybe we won't get enough people to run, I think really is, in my humble opinion, is degrading to the residents of the town. There are enough people in this town that care about the town, that are upset over water sewer bills, are upset over whatever. They have an interest. They you know, they're into water health. They don't like sewers. They do like septic, or vice versa. That would, you know, if the information is provided and the residents of the town are educated on this, which is your department, the select boards, you know, various different avenues to educate the town, I think you will get, you'll get people that are interested. And if it's 3 people, we have 6,000 registered voters. The idea that you're not going to get 3 people, I think, is kind of insulting to make a decision one way or the other on that. So, and I
Thank you.
don't mean-
Are you done?
I am.
Okay. I apologize if my question has come across as degrading or insulting, but I'm going to ask my questions because I like to think about out loud. I'm in a position here to stimulate conversation, to think it through, and that's what I did. And I apologize if it's degrading or insulting. It's certainly not my intent. So can we move on? Thank you. Any more questions or comments? Ms. Harden.
You're supposed to be 6 feet apart, the sign downstairs.
I just want to clarify my previous comments about elections, because I had called the elections in regard to the other the home rule charter change that's suggested, which is the selectmen. And elections told me that no local question can be on a primary ballot or the state November ballot. The only question that can go on a November ballot is a Proposition 2.5 override. They have a special, they allow those if you go through the proper procedures. And there's no way it could be on a town election the following week, because the close of registration to vote's already happened. People have already started voting absentee. The ballots are printed, blah, blah, blah. So it would be it's supposed to be the next regularly scheduled election of town officers, so it will be in May. And we don't have, it mentions special elections here, but we don't have special elections of town officers. So that's why I was saying it would be like a two-year process for this one, because it would get approved at town meeting, and then it would get approved on the ballot the following year, and then it would be, the actual commissioners would be the following year after that. Or you can put on the May election next year, you can put both the question and the election. So people would say, yes, I want this, and these are the people I want, or, no, I don't want this, and not vote for anybody. You can do that. So it could just be a one-year process.
Thank
Okay?
you.
For both that and the select board.
Thank you, Ms. McGinnis. Okay, we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, and Ms. Riley, thank you for coming. If you could present the zoning bylaws that are on the draft warrant.
Good evening. Nicole Riley, Planning Board Clerk. Before you, you have two bylaws that the Planning Board has, sought approval from the Select Board and has held public hearings on. The first has to do with our Associate Planning Board member. The Planning Board consists of 5 elected members, each of which is elected for a term of 5 years. We also have an appointed associate member that is appointed each year. Currently, our associate member has been on for 3 years. The associate member, currently, according to our bylaws, may only vote on special permits. The first bylaw in front of the first article in front of you would amend that to allow the associate member to vote both on special permits and site plans. The purpose of this is so that if we have things scheduled, developers, their engineers, their attorneys are coming before the board, in the event if we do not have a quorum, this allows us to use the associate member to vote on those items as well as the special permit. Currently, associates are not allowed to vote on subdivision control law. They're only allowed to vote on special permits. So the planning board would like to make our process more efficient by having that associate member be able to vote on site plan approvals as well as special permits.
Any questions? Ms. Garzal?
So what is the difference between the powers and responsibilities of a regular planning board member and an associate planning board member?
Actually, the planning board just recently adopted rules and regulations, responsibilities, and those apply to our associate as well as the elected members.
But as I understand it, the associate member is appointed by the select board, whereas the other members are by election.
Correct.
And how long is the time period that the elected members serve?
5 years.
Oh, wow.
Yep. Yes.
That's because it takes about that long to approve a. And let me just add, Mr. Chair, that a special permit is regarding mostly commercial projects.
Correct.
And that is what the associate member could act on. And the subdivision control law is
Residential.
residential.
And site plan approvals is, just to give you an example, if you have a rental space using the Roach Brothers Plaza, for example, if there is a business in there that leaves and another business wants to come in and they're making some changes, but it's not changed structurally, it's coming in, they'll come in and say, okay, these are the changes we're going to do inside, we're not knocking it down any walls, so it's nothing that requires a special permit. It's really just for the town to say, okay, the planning board says, yep, you meet rules A, B, and C. Site plan approval is one of the smaller items that actually the planning board deals with. A special permit is much more in-depth. And special permits are, the associate is already allowed to vote on those, so. Site plan, again, it's really just to add opportunity for the board to vote on an issue that is presented for us in the event that we don't have a quorum.
And how many members do you currently have on the planning board?
John just asked me.
We have, there are 5 elected members.
Okay, Article 24, I think.
The Article 20, the second article is actually simply a housekeeping article at Fall Town Meeting of 2008. Our industrial zone was split into IP1 and IP2 district. IP1 being the small industrial section that is on the east side of town. The IP2 is a larger industrial area that's on the west side of town. I cannot speak to why it was split into IP1 and IP2, but when it was done, all of the height, bulk, and area regulations are the same. However, when the zoning book was updated, the articles were not listed, so that Table 1, which is usage, was updated to include IP2, but Tables 2 and 3, which are the area regulations and the height and bulk regulations, were not updated. So currently, our bylaw book does not have area regulations or height and bulk for IP2 district. So this is simply, yeah.
Good.
Can you say that again? I'm taking minutes. Can you just, so I have the bylaw doesn't have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So currently, we have, Table 2 is is the area. So your square footage, your lot frontage, your side setbacks. That currently has an listing as to those regulations for IP1. It does not have regulations for IP2. Table 3 is the height and bulk, the maximum height that you can have in the district, and the building coverage, meaning how much of the lot can be covered by the building. Industrial is meant, the industrial zone, whether you're on east or west side, is meant to have the same regulations, but the book just wasn't updated properly. So the current charts, the current tables 2 and 3 list IP1, but they don't list IP2.
Thank you.
So this bylaw, we're not even adding an additional line, we're just changing IP1 to read IP1/IP2. So that if somebody is building something new, which fortunately they've just reconstructed buildings, we haven't had this issue yet, so.
So no high rises. hopefully.
There will be no high rises, no. The maximum permitted height in the industrial park is 45, or industrial park, but industrial area is 45 feet.
Thank you.
So, you're welcome.
Just for clarification, there are no other changes?
No, this is.
Thank you.
That's nothing else.
Okay, thank you very much, and I appreciate you letting us defer your presentation in the schedule.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thanks, Nicole.
Okay.
Jody, your table that you sent me was, because John had taken notes last week when we did that, and he had sent it to me. Is your table that you sent me from the video? Okay, all right, so we're gonna pass that on. All right, so I'm gonna give you a synopsis of, where am I? Did I not print it? This.
To clarify, it's from the video, but the warrant has changed.
Correct.
So taking the warrant that we received today and updating the numbers and taking, some of these warrant articles have amounts, so I put those amounts in.
Okay.
So it's not strictly from the video, but the assignments are from the video.
It's more up to date.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so Jody did us a great favor service by listing the articles in spreadsheet format, which Deirdre was always on top of this.
Any update on that, Mr. Chair?
I have no update.
I noticed in the budget here, they took out salaries for FinCom.
Okay, so this is really just a synopsis of the draft warrant as currently presented, we believe. We'll go through it. We're going to go through them at the same time, along with the article assignments that we had last week. So we're just going to go through that. We are likely to discuss these and vote on some of them next week, and definitely the following week, which that meeting is on Monday, the 11th. So we're kind of down the home stretch here, so we need to make sure that everybody knows what their assignments are. they get their questions answered. You can get your questions answered outside of this committee. You feel free to call the, the technical expert or the administrative expert to find out information as you research your warrant and prepare your discussion comments. So let's just go through it. Unpaid bills, we know that's Article 1, and John Lohr has that, as well as Article 2, additional wages and expenses. If I read something that's different than it's listed in the draft warrant, would somebody please grab my attention?
Mr. Chair, as I was putting this together, looking through past warrants, while unpaid bills can be very easy, sometimes it's not, because there's various different enterprise funds and everything, and I was thinking that it might not be the best article to give to someone who hasn't done this before.
Okay.
And to have to start off as a newbie as well. So I certainly would volunteer to take that article, but I would definitely recommend that maybe someone who's done this before kind of start off the process.
Okay. I'm going to check with John, as he does have a little bit of a background in finance, not necessarily public finance, and I'll see if I can make a horse trade consistent with, if necessary, or if appropriate, and we'll potentially trade that one. So let me talk with him, and
Sure.
we'll assign that one. So unpaid bills, Article 1, John, additional wages and expenses. Article 2, also Mr. Lohr. FY '23 operating budget, would be myself. Contract ratifications, number 4, we did not assign. I don't know why we didn't assign it, so we'll come back to that one. Sewer enterprise, water enterprise, and stormwater enterprise, Ms. McGinnis. Consent agenda, Mr. Stedman. Community preservation, pickleball, soundproofing, Ms. Boyardi, which we've already talked about. You're good on that one. Community preservation, town-owned property inventory, Mr. Stedman. Number 11, community preservation, Oak Grove Farm Trail Improvement, Mr. Stedman also. It's blank.
I'll be
but-
happy to do
But
that.
that's right up your alley, correct?
Well, sure,
It is now.
that's easy.
Jody, contract ratification's not a big deal. Ms. Reyes, we know we have to get you some, we'd like to spread the work around.
Many times
Capital items,
Axed anyway.
I skipped 12, so Ms. Reyes also has number 12, recertification. I have capital items, PFAS, water treatment bonding amendment, Mr. Stedman. You certainly can get some help from either myself or Ms. McGinnis on that one.
Yeah, that one's pretty easy, actually.
Should be,
Yeah.
right, it's just add contingency dollars.
Yep, the way the
I
bids
do
have
have the
come in.
write-up, or a write-up on the capital project, and I'm sure Ms. McGinnis
Right, I think the
has
question on
knowledge as
that
well.
is going to be, if we know of any funding that we have gotten for that we can communicate.
There is definitely funding, it's just they need to add money due to bids. They need to add contingency
No,
dollars.
I understand that.
Okay.
But I know we had one grant.
Right.
Of, I think, 1.2 million.
Correct, in the neighborhood.
I don't know if there are any more that that have finalized to the point they can be communicated.
Okay,
I'll
so
try to
Mr.
find that out.
Mr. McKay and Mr. Gazinski can help you with that. Design and construction of sidewalks and roads. So these are articles, this 15 and 16 are articles that the select board has opted to have unique articles or standalone articles for design and construction of sidewalks and roads, and then tree removal and maintenance. Any
Mr. Chair?
volunteers?
I thought the tree removal and maintenance was being folded into the DPW budget. That's what was presented, wasn't it?
They, I believe in the select board meeting on Friday, that they've opted to go this route. So that's I think a late change, and I did not listen to the select board
think there
meeting
was-
yesterday, so.
There's 25,000 in the DPW for tree
Yeah.
work of some type.
Okay, so can I get a volunteer for 15 and 16?
You're a sidewalk fan.
I'm not that much of a fan. Any volunteers for
Yeah, I'll do
15
that.
and 16?
I don't mind.
Jody. Jody, thank you.
No problem.
New computer release, Joyce?
How about 16? Who wants to champion for Brutus?
I put you down for both, Jody.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay.
I think I did trees last time.
No, I didn't,
Oh, well, I helped you write it, though.
but I'm not going to be around, so.
Oh, no.
Number 17, new computer lease, year 1, Ms. Boyardi.
Yes.
And likely you'll be handing those off, I think?
Yeah, most likely will not be here for town meeting. I'm not sure, but
So-
so I'm trying to write everything up ahead of time.
I will
I've
take
got-
them if
Okay.
I'll be your backup.
Okay, because I have already, the pickleball soundproofing, I just have a couple questions that I have to find out about the, who's supplying the trees, and is there an addition, if there's an additional cost? Because there had been a proposal for a landscaper to do the work, but there's also talk of the town supplying trees, so I have to find that out.
Okay.
But other than that, I've got everything else.
Okay. I'll take number 18, the new computer release, or excuse me, the new police cruiser release, year 1. Mr. Underhill, general bylaw, powers and duties of town administrator, number 19. Mr. Stedman, number 20, charter amendment. Mr. Borgman, number 21, charter amendment for select board powers of appointment. Number 22, charter amendment, change the town clerk to appointed. That's Mr. Underhill. 23 zoning bylaw, 24 zoning bylaw, both Ms. Garzon. Unemployment insurance, Mr. Lohr. OPEB, Mr. Lohr. Stabilization fund, Mr. Borgman. And then the 2 petition articles. Do we have any volunteers for both? We'll keep those together. Any volunteers for the petition articles? And I think I've talked with Kathy. I don't, likely, I think you're going to recuse yourself
Yes.
from those. So Kathy is an obvious choice, but depending on how the vote goes, no one's more knowledgeable about it than Kathy, but somebody else that wants to volunteer that has a good understanding of it, please.
Mr. Chair, do you think that there's any way those two can be combined?
As a single warrant
No,
article?
just in discussion, and then
Yeah,
a
sure, I think they
vote.
should be.
I mean,
Well,
does someone
that I
say-
don't know. I mean,
yeah. No,
that
it
would
has
be
to-
up
you have
to
to say
the select board
separately,
and the moderator.
talk about it.
You have bylaw and charter, so you can't combine them.
And it's
And
up
one
to the
is
discussion
moderator.
two-thirds
purposes. Okay,
It's just the
Thank you.
format of town meeting.
That would be up to the moderator to combine them if they wanted to.
I'll do it. Nobody else wants to do it.
I'm gonna hold off.
Okay.
Just because I think just because of what you, honestly, being candid, what you just said, not necessarily understanding the enterprise funds, probably should be, have a good
That's
grasp
fine.
of it. And I don't mean to be insensitive or.
No, no,
or
not
put
at
you on
all.
the spot.
And
I appreciate you
yeah.
stepping up, and I
Yeah.
will likely take it myself unless somebody volunteers and trade you a couple of, you can have the operating budget.
You can have the good and plenties.
Actually, I'll
want
give
the
you,
Snickers or
Sarah, how about this? You take 17 and 18. You'll be the backup on Joyce's for the computer release. You'll get the new police cruiser. And I'll take the petition articles.
Now you made me
And I
make
just
a
want to
mess.
state something for the record. When I ask questions in here, they are zero indication of how I feel about something. It really is to stimulate conversation and think about all of the angles so that I can come up with so I can thoughtfully come up with how I think I'm going to vote. I was actually kind of taken aback by what was said, but if that's how it's perceived and that's on me,
I don't think-
I'm responsible
I
for my
wouldn't worry
words.
about it.
Anyone read
I
into
don't
it
think
that way?
that, yeah.
Well, clearly somebody did. So,
Anyone here?
anyway. All right, so that is
But
28
I
and
think your
29.
point is well taken on all of these, and the planning board is dealing with that, because their bylaws don't have anything that deals with a vacancy or an attendance policy, which
It really has been,
oftentimes is in that type of commission.
However, we had 3 people who wanted to put the position here for the finance, and we were
No,
only
I'm-
able
I'm-
to
I'm-
select one, so.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying you
good.
can't, but when you have
Yeah.
a vacancy for whatever reason, it can make things difficult if you don't have in your bylaws some provision for interim appointments until the next election or whatever.
Point well taken.
No, excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
These are elected positions. You can't enforce people to attend. They resign. If they resign, that's what you want because there can be a special town election. But if they don't show up, that's not,
No,
there's
but-
absolutely no recourse the town can make.
Yeah.
There are in some commissions, if you miss a certain number of meetings, you can be,
Non-elected. Okay, I'm
I
not
don't-
going to
I'm
argue
not
the
gonna argue
point
that
because
but
it might be different in different states.
could be.
Okay.
Mr.
Okay,
Chair?
Ms. Garzon.
So I started working on kind of free cash needs allocations as well, and I'm a little concerned.
You should be.
So I just wanted to know kind of what was our time frame for the capital items?
So Mr. Barry is on the schedule for next week.
Okay,
Just to give the committee a little bit more situational awareness, in the select board meeting on Friday, there was public discussions on how to handle the shortfall, the school shortfall that's associated with sped increases, and a number of options were floated. We will have a presentation. They actually met Monday night and had some more discussions, I think, on that in addition to the sewer bylaw. So there's a few spreadsheets that literally just were changed and provided. They're not on our agenda, but they will be on our agenda for both the 6th and the 11th. Carol will go through, will request, demand. I don't have to. She'll be here to go through the changes to the budget for us to consider. If that will give us time to consider it, to make a recommendation potentially, and then likely vote on the 11th on the budget. But one of the items that you should anticipate seeing is that the free cash is going to go from somewhere about $360,000 down to about $220,000, and that is so that a portion of that money will go as a one-time plus up for the school budget to handle the sped requirements. And then there were a number of other transfers between lines in order to make up that shortfall or that gap within the school budget. And so we will make sure that we have a presentation of those so that we have a good understanding of the bigger picture budget rather than just the individual requests, as well as the capital lines. The capital planning committee met last night really to finalize its recommendations. Really, there's like 11 or 12 capital requests. They'll be presented to us in 3 different categories, the highest need, the medium need, and the low need. Unfortunately, some of that is academic in the sense that there's only $220,000. You could really eat that up with, two different purchases, whether it be a school server, whether it be a piece of equipment, that there's 5 pieces of equipment being requested. It's not gonna go far, and frankly, as typically free cash does not go far during this budget cycle. It's typically more in the fall where there's more free cash spending. So those projects will stay on the list. The select board still has to make their they have to put on the warrant what they're recommending for funding for vote, and we'll make our recommendation accordingly as to whether we want changes. We'll give them that feedback. So I anticipate Mr. Barry will present that. I hope we have feedback from the select board as to what they're going to select, and then we'll do that by the 11th. So
That was my question, Mr. Chair. Does your capital planning, not yours, but the capital planning committee, do they take into account how much money that the town has for free cash, or do you prioritize and report?
for the most part, we prioritize the requirements based on criticality of the need and a number of other factors that get scored. We are aware of the free cash number. I would not say that we're aware of it. It's not considered necessarily in the ranking for the, for the most part. I mean, a lot of times sometimes there's grant money to either contribute to a project or to pay in whole for a project, but we still prioritize it, as an example, so.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, many of the new articles that we saw this week, between last week and this, are demands on free cash. So, I mean, it far exceeds what we'll be able to allocate. So we're gonna have to, be pretty tight with our recommendations. There just isn't
I
enough
agree.
to go around, so.
And looking at what was handed out today, the school budget is above the maximum amount that they asked for when they were here last week. The maximum amount they asked for was $18,122,000. If you add in the 129 that Mr. Guzinski mentioned, that's $18,252. And the budget request that's on here from the town administrator is $18,521. So that's another $270,000 over and above the maximum the school wanted. So there's
And Mr. Chair, one more question.
Go ahead.
Has there been any updates on how the ARPA funds have been spent by the town?
I don't think we got an itemized data product from the finance director on that, so that's something that we can request, and certainly put it in, our packet for next week for discussion.
I think that would be helpful in light of, how tight free cash is gonna be and the many capital requests that there are, to just know what has been able to be fulfilled through those federal and state funds. That would be very helpful.
That's a good point.
And also, Mr. Chair, Ms. Johnson had given us a list of the requests for above-level funding. And a couple of those, I believe, are included in the town administrator's request. Something to be able to look at that quickly.
She had that, I don't mean to interrupt you, she had that at the select board meeting on Friday. It was included in our packet, so I suspect it will be in her presentation.
I know
for
some of
next
those
week.
are included in here, some are not.
Yep.
So,
Okay. All right, so we have some homework assignments coming up, and I'm gonna give them to you now versus waiting until right before. Typically, it always seems to end up this way for annual town meeting in the spring, where it's right before, spring break for the kids. Doesn't mean any of us are on spring break, but nonetheless, I want to give the homework assignment now, and hopefully
Memories.
we have all of the, data that we need. There's no reason to not give you this assignment. So one of the first deliverables that we have as committee members is to write up a synopsis, really a 2-sentence synopsis on the articles that we've been assigned. And in order to help us do that, I just wanted to give these are excerpts. They're not, it says draft, but it really is an excerpt from last town meeting last year that you can use. Potentially, there's a similar article in there, but you can at least see what the deliverable consists of. So
is
if
this
you
the
would just,
spring or fall town meeting?
the spring town meeting is officially the annual town meeting.
So that's from the spring meeting.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yep. There's 3 pages, so that's just one. Keep those packets together. There's 3 total pages. Sorry, I didn't staple them. I'm not good admin support. Keep them together. They're already collated.
Pete, can you believe he said that?
What's that?
You're not good at it.
I'm not good admin support. I didn't staple the
21 and
packets.
1. Hold on.
There's page 5, 6, and 7. Don't split up the packages that I'm handing.
We have.
But there's,
Send this one to.
no, because I'm
So
getting
my
another
right
7.
follows
I have
instructions,
Articles
my
10
left
here.
does
We
not.
are- I have Article 10.
You probably have all page 3.
I only have 7.
Thank you.
Do you have
Yourself.
7?
No,
5, 6,
no,
and
I
7.
have 10
All right,
through,
so you've got a complete
No,
set.
do you have page 7?
Congratulations.
5, 6,
You're
7.
good. Sorry, I know. Sorry.
I have my digital files of years.
So in the warrant booklet, which, or the town report, this goes into that booklet. It has to be ready prior to the 18th of April. So that's why I'm giving it to you now. I need you all, I will give you until I'm gonna give you to the 11th to have these to me. Email them direct to me. Please don't put anybody else on the email. Find your warrant article that we just went through and write up a similar,
Okay.
2-sentence, 3-sentence. I mean, if there's a really intricate article or detailed article, you can be a little bit more. The votes, we'll put that tally in there at the end of the night on the 11th. Some articles we may not vote on, who knows? It could be recommended at town meeting. But hopefully we don't have that situation. And then the chair's comments, I'll write those up, and those will go into the report as well, along with the capital planning committee's report. And I really just, the reason I want to make sure that we get a head start on this, I'll get to you, Joyce, I promise.
Okay.
The
Sorry.
reason I want to make sure of this is because typically Deirdre does a ton of work on this to put it together. And without her, frankly, I'm not sure how we're going to pull it off. I am on vacation that week, so I want to get as much of it done before I go and as little of it done or to be done while I'm gone, because every year I end up working on this on vacation so far. So, Ms. Boyardi.
I have a question for you as far as how they're written here in the warrant. Would not our presentation be, say, the
It'll-
way article, and then we write our synopsis of what it is when we speak?
You're really just gonna do a very quick blurb. You can get some of your information from it, but it really is just hey, this is what the article is about. Frankly, I'm not even certain why we bother to do it, because you're right, it is very similar.
It's the same thing.
It shouldn't be the same thing, but it's similar. That is the select board's language. This is what we put together. So, and not to mention, it ends with our, I don't want to see us writing some of the articles are really long.
No, but I
really
mean,
want-
I've got this one, and I
You
can't
can-
really change the verbiage on this much.
I understand. And then it will conclude with the finance committee's recommendation,
Right.
okay?
Mr. Chair, can we use this language?
You can,
If we find it, a
Absolutely.
lot of it is
Okay,
yearly,
'cause-
so, okay.
yes, that's why I'm
Okay,
giving it to you.
Thank you.
Yep,
Thank you, it's a help.
okay.
Be a little extra in your paycheck because of this.
Thank you, appreciate it.
And for our new members, we'll try to get you the glossary. I'll make sure that
Oh,
the
yeah.
chair has that and can disseminate that to all the members. So we do have a glossary of terms, which is helpful when you're trying to write the finance committee report, because municipal speak is a whole language unto itself.
Yep.
Okay.
And then, so the next delivery after this one will be due on the 11th. The next delivery after that is your discussion comments. And your discussion comments are what, if you recall at last fall town meeting or any town meetings that you've gone to, the moderator will ask for a motion. You'll be given the motion. You'll read it verbatim. Madam Moderator, Mr. Berube, Madam Moderator, article blah, 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 and it's really it's nothing that you have here. It's stuff that the town attorney crafts with the town administrator and anybody else that, is an expert in it. The town attorney will draft up the motion. After the motion is given, somebody will second, and then the town moderator will say, she'll synopsize, a third synopsis of the same thing, and then she'll say discussion, and then you'll say, Madam Moderator. And then there's your full-on, down in the weeds, really detailed information, along with pros and cons, things that you considered, things that the committee considered when it came up with our vote, because you are presenting the article on behalf of the committee. So your discussion, if anybody remembers Doug Riley, last spring,
The poor guy.
he had, what were the articles? The zoning, there was zoning,
And the charter.
charter change. He had pages and pages of things. That was the fall town meeting, was the charter. And then in the spring, he had something crazy. He had, I don't know, he had ended up with the marijuana stuff when that was out. He had pages and pages of things that he was trying to convey so that people could understand our recommendation. And it is appropriate in many cases to come up with the dissenting, a blurb about the dissenting, why the issue, was voted a certain way, or what the salient issues of, pros and cons. You don't have to synopsize everything that was said during our discussions or during this meeting, but you should try to help people make up their mind on how they're gonna vote, and then conclude with why the FinCom voted a certain, whichever way we voted, for or against. Sometimes we recommend dismissal, so, we'll see.
Mr. Chair?
Ms.
But
McGinnis?
don't you think there are some articles that may not require additional description? Sort of like.
Yeah, there
the
are some.
enterprise
Yeah,
funds?
sure.
I mean, this is it, and really, okay, just want to make sure
There
that we're
are
not all.
some that are very, very simple. Like the dissent, or not the dissent, the consent, what is that called? Article, you have it,
Yeah,
John.
the consent article. This
Consent
is an
article.
article that we vote on every year.
Yeah, it can be very simple, so, anyway,
Yeah.
there's plenty of us here that have done it a number of times. I mean, I ask Jody questions all the time, so it's not a matter of how long you've been here. There are people that are, there are people that you can lean on to get help to do the discussion comments, so.
Question.
And then, one more, last thing is, so I would like for those to be done prior to the pre-town meeting, because I would like for us to be prepared for questions and comments at pre-town meeting. Now, typically, we haven't had many people attend pre-town meeting, but we need to be prepared for that to happen. That's part of our job. Our responsibility is to have pre-town meeting so that we can prepare people to come to town meeting to discuss and come up with their own comments and their own questions, so. All right, Ms. Boyardi?
So when we write up the article, say we've written up, then in that explanation that's going into the warrant, that's where we put Finance Committee recommends this? Or after, I thought it was always after our, because this was presented by.
It'll be in both places.
Okay.
The report will have the synopsis, and it will conclude with the
And then-
Finance Committee's recommendation. And your discussion
Well, I
will
know
also,
that does.
will also include our vote, the committee's vote,
Okay.
okay?
Show off.
And if we have any votes that are such that there's a dissenting opinion is allowed, then we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. It's in our procedures as to, what that vote is and how we do it.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah,
Any-
we haven't voted on any of them yet.
Not yet.
We've just been understanding them.
Correct. Gathering facts,
Right.
which is why I've tried to,
Ask questions.
ask questions, let's debate, get ready. We're gonna have long meetings on the 6th and the 11th.
And
It'll be
Mr.
awesome.
And, Mr. Chair, we don't just have our recommendations, we also have to, each article has to have a funding source, unless it is a non-financial article. So that makes it even more complicated.
Yep.
But we will keep track of that. This actually is only part of the spreadsheet. It goes on from there, so.
Yep. Thank you for doing that, I appreciate it.
Yeah,
No
really
problem.
nice, thank you.
Okay, any last questions? We didn't have any minutes for,
I had a paper due last
I'm just
week.
making sure I'm making
You were
sure I'm not
looking for your
speeding time.
chickens.
That's it. Those
Yeah.
weren't mine.
Oh, they weren't?
No,
You got wrongly blamed.
I did.
I offered to take
They
them.
look like mine.
He keeps his chickens in his own yard.
I was gonna say, I know.
I'll take a
Are
motion.
you a neighbor?
I move that we adjourn.
Somewhat, but.
Second.
Moved and second that we adjourn. All those in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.
That's what
Thank
man you are. You don't let your chickens go in anybody else's yard.
I let them out an hour before sunset, and the
I've
girls
got
like
the
going around the yard, but
Yeah.
after that, they go running right in.